Worm is a web serial by J.C. McCrae, also known as Wildbow. You can read Worm in its original format by visiting parahumans.wordpress.com or donate to Wildbow's Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. This story isn't intended for young or sensitive readers. Readers who are on the lookout for trigger warnings are advised to give Worm a pass. For a complete list, check the description for all of Worm's trigger warnings.
Good morning, Brockton Bay. Coming at you like a punch to the face, the crew.
Hello.
Sadly, only part of the crew.
We are down one today, but we are still strong here. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Brockton Bay Book Club. And tonight we are reviewing just the first 4 chapters of Arc 5 of Worm. Break from our normal arc and episode format, but there is just so much in this arc. No way we're containing this to to one episode. So let's get into it. We are looking at those first 4 chapters again. And
Do you want me to go over the summary?
I was going to say, Alan, if you got the summaries for us, let's go.
So we open up with the villains coming together for their meeting at a restaurant. And then, of course, after the meeting, Danny and Taylor go shopping, in which an incident occurs, which sees them and all the bullies in the principal's office.
Excellent. All right. I think we'll just, it's not a lot chapter-wise, but we'll still kind of go chronologically here. So let's sort of start with that first chapter. And as always, let's get our initial reactions from our 2 first-time readers, Kat and Taylor. Kat, what'd you think?
Whether it's the concussion or she's just finally getting fed up, thank God she finally punched this bitch in the face. And I'm not talking about bitch, I'm talking about Emma.
Such a satisfying moment.
Oh yeah. I mean, just every emotion finally welling up to that. It's so good.
Taylor, initial reactions?
I have always been under the impression that, because I'm sure that we've all wondered, if I get sent into a fantasy realm, would I be a bard? Would I be a cleric? I've always thought I'd be a blacksmith. I would definitely have my own shop. I want to do something. And for this universe, having a supervillain speakeasy is definitely on the top of my list right now. We immediately jump into politics. And as a nerd that has read most of Tom Clancy's actual novels, oh boy, did I love this part of it. Also, women hitting other women in the face. Good on you. But this first couple chapters is where I had the most fun.
Yeah, I really love the way this arc starts with a sort of ominous meeting between all of these villains. Some we've met, some we haven't met. Got some new faces, got some new looks, some new colors. That was kind of a fun scene. And for me, it reminded me so much of like the great scene from The Dark Knight, where all the gangs are getting together trying to talk about Batman, and Joker makes his entrance. Very reminiscent of that scene, but also very different because we had quite a few different characters here. Did any of them stand out to you? That is open to everybody here.
Yeah, I'll start us off. I definitely, and I should have known, but as soon as I heard the names Finga and Minga, or Finja and Minja, I immediately was like, okay, this is the dumbest thing ever. But it proceeded to bring me into Danish lore when I freaking looked it up, and we had the maid servants of Danish King Frothy, And I was like, okay, this is, yeah, I love delving deep into this stuff. So I think that those two kind of stood out to me a little
I
bit.
read it as Fenya and Menya.
I think it would be, yeah.
Yeah, it's
I think maybe the audiobook says, is it Finja and Minja?
I'm not sure because I know that for the Danish, it's the Danish king Frodi, which is Frodi, but it's actually pronounced Frothy.
Okay.
So I actually don't know. I didn't look up their pronunciation.
Gotcha.
Well, thankfully we have somebody for that. Michael, if you want to correct us at any point, feel free if you find that.
And if it sounds dumb enough, we'll correct Wildbow.
Yeah, as we do, right? As we do, because we definitely know better. Yeah. Anyone else? What else? Who else stood out to you in that
The
scene?
giant gorilla person. I just the more powers that pop up, the more I'm like, God, it would suck to be you. Like Neuter.
Yeah.
First of all, his name is Neuter. Second of all, all of his secretions are poison.
Whoa, they're not poison.
Slow down.
Hey, I'm just talking about, we got a lot of people in there, and I'm just telling you who stood out to me, and later learning more stood out.
That's fair.
But I'm like, that would.
Also, I'd never thought about that name Neuter because
Yeah.
you always see it written, Newt,
Yeah.
like a lizard. And if I just heard it, I just realized Neuter. I'm like, is he and Skitter about to get together and recastrate Lung? Like, what's about to happen?
Well, he's already been castrated. Now he's going to be neutered. Different parts.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. No, the Travelers as a whole is a really interesting group. And just kind of the thing that stood out to me this time reading it was just that immediately what's noticed about them is somebody goes, "Oh, you guys are out of town. We didn't actually expect you to show up." It's kind of an interesting, I don't know. It leads to some intrigue for their characters. And obviously, I have read the rest of it, so I know more about them, but I didn't realize how early on that intrigue existed in the story. And I really like that.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I don't think it's much of a spoiler to say, hey, we see some of these characters again. But I forgot too how early on they showed up. And to build off of that too, at rereading this, seeing them as visitors to Brockton Bay, and the fact that we knew that Lung was also sort of a visitor to Brockton Bay that stuck around. It does sort of give some fun life to this fictional city, right? It feels like there's something about Brockton Bay that is drawing power and people here, whether that's just reading into the text or whether there is something more going on. It's kind of fun to see how everybody's sort of coming together in the same place.
Yeah, and just the fact that there is such a collection of villains here who all have their own groups that they're contributing to. It's a big enough city that you have, how many gangs was it? 4 or 5 who all are claiming their own territory, staking out their own ground, maybe 6 even. Because I'm thinking it was Coil, Empire 88, Asian Bad Boys. Fault Lines are mercenaries, so they don't really have territory. Skidmark, the Travelers, the Undersiders. It's a significant number of villain gangs that are in this poor big town, I guess. And I just think that's interesting for that. Yeah.
The place that they went, for them to have a deaf waitress, it's so great as a villain or bad guy plotting place, because you're not going to be overheard by the waitress when she's serving you. I felt
and the chef gets killed every week.
Skitter was kind of oh, she's deaf, and was not processing that there's probably a very good reason why whoever owns this place is you're going to be the waitress, because obviously the kind of people that come in there want privacy. So
also, we've all seen this villain meeting place, right? Because I can
what do
think
you
of
mean?
2 restaurants here where I live that are 100% this restaurant.
Oh yeah.
We know.
I
Yeah, we know
mean-
exactly where they're meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. It certainly wouldn't be like, oh, this is so weird. I think, yeah, if you've been in any kind of like mid to large size city, yeah, you can probably think of 1 or 2 locations that just immediately scream super sketchy things happen here.
Absolutely.
Well, it's again, it's another one of those tropes, right? That we see all the time, right? The underground, bar, the club beneath the club, right? All where all the
Yeah.
shenanigans happen. But again, it just the way Wild Boar writes it feels so different. It's familiar, but fresh.
I will say this though. I think that if this were written today, that kind of place wouldn't work because I'm thinking about some places like that. And the problem is nowadays they're totally hipster destinations. Like everybody's
Oh
like,
God.
oh, you want to go to that historical speakeasy down in the bad district? It's so cool, man. They've got a deaf waitress. It's great, that they care about people with with disabilities like that, and it just immediately wouldn't work in 2023 probably.
Not at all.
Yeah, 2023, they're all hanging out at like a little. If they wanted to really hide in public, they would just go and like stand around in a public park or something, and just hold up signs so that nobody wants to make eye
Or a
contact.
library.
Yeah, it's the end is nigh.
Yeah,
The end is nigh. Exactly.
Oh, but there is a meme that
Oh.
goes around a lot that says, at least on the memes that I typically see, where it's at the end of a war movie, it says this film is dedicated to the brave fighters of the Mujahideen. And at the end of our series, there's definitely going to be like this was dedicated to the brave fighters of Coil and the paramilitary boys, because oh my God, I cannot imagine just being a completely super powerless gang, but holding your own against all these guys.
yeah, and we'll get into that, of course, as in the back half of this arc. But interesting because Coil's group is all, or what appears to be, just sort of well funded, but not exactly that we can see at this point. Not exactly powered in any way.
I'm curious too what Kat and Taylor think about Coil in particular, because he not only does he come across as maybe not even having powers, but being super well funded, but he also seems like kind of the spokesperson for the villains in Brockton Bay. Like he's the one kind of rounding everybody up, talking to everybody, making deals with Fault Line about making sure she doesn't go to the wrong side. Like he seems like the leader of this weird villain group in his own way. So I'm curious what you guys think of that, of this potentially unpowered person holding so much power over the villains.
Well, I think
Or maybe you see it differently.
I think he has the biggest power of them all, and that's green. He's got that green, because literally it's like, oh, I have superpowers, but I mean, how am I going to eat? Oh, I guess I'll rob a bank. And I think he's definitely the one pulling the strings, I think.
Dang.
Any other thoughts on that kind of first chapter there?
I mean, this is the first time Lisa's finally called Taylor Skitter. That was kind of a breakthrough
I missed
moment.
that. Nice. Forgot about that.
Yeah, I definitely like.
This was also a fun time for. Go say that again.
I was saying I definitely laughed at Skidmark's defense of his drug dealing, where he's just like, we don't just sell to children.
And not just the men, the women.
Oh my God.
Gosh.
You gotta-
Let's just talk about each of the gangs in turn, because Empire 88 rolls up and they come in style. In fact, I feel like everybody coming in here had style.
Oh,
Yeah.
Empire 88, of course, had the most swag because, I mean, these are politicians and police officers and well-to-do people.
There's just something about fascists and Hugo Boss,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they look the part.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, he literally comes in his like suit of armor and crown with 2 supermodels on his arms, and then behind him is like his bodyguard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, behind him, he's got what? Purity and Hookwolf behind him, right?
He's got Purity, Hookwolf, and doesn't he have Night and Fog as well?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Night and Fog. So yeah,
they
are the squad rolling in, right?
Completely unnecessary, but
But you love to see it too at the same time, right?
Yeah. And then we roll over. We've got Fault Line's crew, which, I'm a sucker for strong female character. And boy, Fault Line coming in riot gear and a battle skirt is some hot shit.
Oh, yeah. I love their look.
And then finally, of course, Skidmark's crew, which I just have marked as, because I couldn't remember their gang name if they even have one. And I just have, and then the D-Gens from Upcountry.
I mean, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
They're the they're the meth heads, basically, is what it feels like.
Yes, definitely.
My wife and I, we just ended up watching Breaking Bad for the first time this year, all the way through.
Very nice.
And I can see in my head like which of the meth crews Skidmark's crew is. Like I can picture it in my head, and yeah, not pleasant people, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I love that the Undersiders have a seat at this table too. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Because like we're following them, right? So like they're sort of our heroes here, but certainly in terms of what we've been presented and what we know about these other groups, we don't, at least for me rereading it, it was like, wow, I forgot that the Undersiders are kind of taken seriously. Like they've had some big fights here. They put themselves on the map. So it's kind of fun to see them join the ranks of the rest of the groups.
Mm.
Yeah, it's this funny thing where it hits you where you realize like we know that they're teenagers, but nobody else does. Like that was kind of that realization rereading this again of like everybody thinks that these are, everybody here is equal. These are just another group of villains. They might be a bit younger, but they still have a lot to say and it's important. But no, yeah, they're just kids. I mean, they're high schoolers essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's wild. Like it's wild to think that high schoolers could be sitting at the same table as basically, the modern neo-Nazi leader, some paramilitary guy with tons of money and meth dealers.
We see Taylor kind of have that, the words escaping me, but that kind of like breaking of the fourth wall for her, like with Shadow Stalker at the mall, where she's just like, this is a teenager yelling at my dad right now. Like my dad's just letting a teenager scold him right now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
The moment
it's
of
just
clarity.
like this is they're literally high schoolers. Like I think she's just starting to get more like before she wasn't in it. So everybody that was a cape was mystical and cool, and it was like all just so niche, and she wanted to be a part of it. But now that she's a part of it, it's just like become so normal. She's just like, this is ridiculous. Like I just thought that was so funny when she's just like, this teenager is yelling at my dad right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of the same thing here in the bar too, right? Where it's like, wait a second. These are teenagers hanging out with these grown adults who are crime lords.
Yeah. And they're not the only teenagers there either.
That's true.
Neuters, I think we established, is 16.
Yeah.
And Labyrinth is also, I'm pretty sure, said before when they walk in there to be like maybe a freshman in high school. Like very clearly she's
Pretty
young.
Yeah.
And Fault Line herself is what they said, like probably somewhere around 22, 24.
That's right. Yeah, she's supposed to.
And she's leading a crew that is kind of getting the better of Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which I think is fun because, Tattletale's power is to be smarter than everybody else in the room a lot of the time. And here comes Fault Line, who is, just kind of apparently known for kicking her ass when it comes to smarts. And that's wild.
Yeah. It does kind of make you feel the whole like, okay, what can Fault Line do? What is her power?
Yeah.
Because if Taylor is admitting that Fault Line has some weight behind what she can do and how she can influence people, or not Taylor, if Tattletale says that, if Lisa says that, then you know that like, okay, there's something pretty serious going on.
I also love that we get. This is not going to be. I don't think it's the first time, and it's not going to be the llast time I make some sort of reference to Veep on HBO. just because it lives rent free in my head. But as it should. But Lisa, like, because what a perfect character for exposition, right? Like, that's Wildbow's little cheat sheet, is just having Lisa being able to explain everything as people come in. But I kept thinking of if you're familiar with Veep and Tony Hale's character, whenever like the vice president is being introduced to large groups of people, he's just standing over her shoulder, whispering into her ear who everybody is and like one important fact about them. And I was just getting that the whole time with Lisa, like, oh, fault line, yada yada yada. Oh, here's Coil, yada yada yada, just like secretly in the back the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's something I hadn't thought about until hearing it again now. But Coil, for all how like his seriousness and his, the kind of the grounded nature of his crew, he has a very ostentatious and kind of silly outfit. It's very comic booky. When everybody else, while they're, they have costumes, they're kind of more practical or, fit a theme that's, not like, oh, I'm a superhero. It's, his is very clearly though, like, I'm a supervillain, and he wears an all skin tight suit that, is akin to the polka dot man from DC.
An all skin tight suit with the snake coiling around it, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Which is very cool.
It's cool.
In concept,
cool,
but like looking at it, it probably looks a little goofy.
I like thinking of because like you said, from what we know of Coil right now, he's just very, very wealthy. That's about all we could tell. So I like the thought of he's really just trying to play supervillain. So he's like, well, I've got to be a supervillain. I guess I need a costume. I can't just wear like a nice suit, even though I could afford it. So he's got to put something together. And it feels like everybody else is like, his group is well funded. His paramilitary is like thousands of dollars worth of armor and gear, but he still has to have the supervillain costume to look the part.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that he's described too, I think part of what's interesting with him is the way that he's described, right? Not only is he this possibly unpowered paramilitary person, but he also is described as really thin. He is not a physically imposing person at all. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what fascinates me about him, is that he just is. He's nothing really special. He just is.
Like Taylor said, most powerful thing you can have
is green.
That cheddar.
It's true.
All right. Any more things about the villain meeting before we move to the aftermath?
So Taylor did have a thought that continued to interest me, because she seems to still think that she's going to leave them and betray them, the Undersiders. And I just don't see her. I see her becoming more and more of a villain from here. Like, I just think that she's going to start seeing those in the Protectorate as the Emmas of the world. People who are not actually good people, but are treated like they're walking on water, even if they legitimately can walk on water. But you get my metaphor. So I don't know. I just think it's interesting because we see her get more and more comfortable, more and more close. I mean, she spent how much time just hanging out with them after her concussion. And then here she is saying, I knew it would be hard to turn on them, to pull off that grand betrayal and turn their information over to the Protectorate. But she was saying, like, I knew I could still do it. Like, I don't think you can. I don't think you're going to do that. But whatever you say, I guess. We'll see.
Yeah, whatever keeps you going.
Yeah, definitely comes across as her trying to convince herself more than anything. Yeah. Like,
absolutely.
I'm totally going to turn these guys in. Yeah, they're villains. Obviously. If anyone asks me, I'm going to do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the right thing to do.
I'm not a villain. Even if I'm doing the exact same things that all the villains do.
Exactly.
Moving outside of the meeting afterwards, we have the blow up where Hook, Wolf, and Bitch have their little disagreement because he runs the dogfighting rings and she's breaking that up in the interlude. Afterwards, Brian has to have another one of his talks with Bitch. And I totally get the reason, but every time he does it, he says the same thing, which is like, I hate it when you make me do this. And it's just such abuse language.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially since he's the one that saved his sister from that. Unfortunately, it does show the cycle of abuse that kind of goes from it. I actually had the same thing written down.
Yeah, and his dad, too, I mean, is also...
that's who he saved his sister from, yeah.
No,
he saved his sister's
boyfriend.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
From the boyfriend. But his dad is also a really intense person, right? He's mentioned his dad was in the military. His dad's the reason why he knows how to fight. Yeah. Because his dad's the one, he was saying his dad is the one who, like, I may have been like an 8-year-old kid, but that doesn't mean that a grown man was going to go easy on me. Even though he was, 3 times my size and weight. And so I can hear, you can kind of hear the echoes of that bad dad voice. That's like, I hate that you're making me do this to you. And that kind of unhealthy family pattern that you can see there. Absolutely. I hadn't picked up on that, but that's a great observation.
Yeah, which is so wild, because it's Brian, and Brian is like the steady, least villainy person we've kind of met in the group.
Yeah, but I also think it's kind of an interesting scene too, because you sort of get a little bit of insight into Brian and Rachel's dynamic, because they go back further than anybody else in the group. They were sort of partnered up before they joined the Undersiders, and we know what we know of Bitch. She sort of responds in theme to her whole power. Where she sort of, in terms of the story at least, like there is that alpha wolf dynamic, right? And so seeing Brian sort of take that role. I mean, we even see that in Bitch's interlude, right? From Brutus's perspective, where he says, Rachel is the alpha of their pack, but she's not the alpha of her pack, and kind of recognizes Brian in that role. And sort of taking on that angle of the relationship is kind of interesting. Abusive, yes, but also sort of what Rachel needs. It feels so dirty and wrong coming out of my mouth to say that, but like we're talking about these characters in a story. Nobody needs or deserves abuse. Let's just be very upfront about that. But in terms of this character and the way that she responds and how animalistic she reacts to things, it's sort of fitting.
Yeah, we get that the talking. Finally we get an opportunity to kind of like have Taylor's talk with Bitch, where she looks at her and is like, clearly Bitch isn't getting it, and Taylor kind of has this moment of like trying to emotionally relate and begin to figure out what the hell's up with Rachel. And so she reaches out and, has this moment of sympathy with Bitch, where they kind of trade like, hey, Emma really fucked me up, and I kind of understand like Bitch's anger, and my anger, and how they kind of intertwine and mirror each other, and have this good moment as they're like walking and talking, and she's thinking, still thinking about betraying him, but
it's this interesting dynamic that Bitch and Taylor have there, and I think a lot of it is because you have that kind of mutual understanding where Taylor gets what it's like to be put down and to be hurt, and she's trying to put herself into Bitch's shoes, and I think that's really admirable. And it's just a tough place where she's like, I'm trying to understand you, but I don't really get you either. But yeah, we get that insight into Bitch, and I like that, where it's like Brian says in the bar, he's like, listen, if you are in this area and you attack or you are doing bad things to dogs, you just kind of know. I like the analogy he uses. He's like, you wouldn't tell your people to stop harassing gay people, would you? And Kaiser's like, of course not. Why would anyone do that? Obviously, yeah. Which I kind of do love that in a twisted way. And Gru's just like, well, okay, then it's, the same thing. If you're doing bad stuff to dogs, you should just know. Like you're gonna get it from Rachel. It's just the way it is, man.
Mm-hmm.
Don't blame us when she comes beating down your door.
All right. Everyone's said their piece on this chapter. Let's go ahead and move on, because we've got so much to talk about still, and we're through chapter 1. There's so much meat in this arc.
Oh, that was chapter 2 as well.
Oh, that's true. Okay, chapter 1 there. And 2. Okay, you're right. That's right. I misread my notes here. All right, so chapter 3, the mall, post terrorist attack at a mall, which is unfortunately relevant in terms of the atmosphere and the mood that we sort of get in that scene. How did that come across for everybody?
Just the capitalistic, in order to keep people coming into these big crowded places, we're holding a bunch of sales. And Taylor even comments like, yeah, it's probably not the smartest thing, but, and I was like, no, yeah, this is definitely, this is real life. This is exactly what would happen.
I mean, it did.
The post 9/11 blowout.
Post-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw that with, and a lot of things were shut down, and they were still trying to find ways to incentivize people to shop. Now, online shopping kept a lot of places in business, but also like when people weren't patronizing those stores, they get shut down. So I kind of get it, because like the businesses, like people still need to make money, but it is kind of, interesting that the way they have the police there, but then they have, a random teenager and her superhero chaperone, just causing a scene, not really doing much, but to help the situation, because I feel like they're just, causing more issues than they were helping.
Yeah, it's kind of that mixture of, you want people to feel like they're safe. And in this world, the way that people would probably feel safe is if there are superheroes around. The downside, like you said, that creates is that also draws a lot of attention, and it may even draw more people there, which makes that technically an even more unsafe environment, especially when you're thinking of, you're thinking like a terrorist. You want to hit things that will cause a lot of emotional damage, not just physical damage. A big mall is a good place to hit. If there's heroes there, even better, because you might knock out a couple of big heroes that you want to get rid of. It's a weird dynamic between, I imagine, the protectorate and the wards wanting to keep people safe versus, and trying to keep businesses open, versus balancing that with, if we make it too attractive of a target, it's a bad thing.
And I like too how I think she says that, people want to go back to normal, like they want to be there shopping and enjoying everything, right? So people are trying to experience a bit of normalcy and sort of try to forget everything that's been happening. But it's hard to do that too when you have capes present and checkpoints and bag checks and all this kind of stuff. Like, you can't really return to that normal, but people are going to try anyway.
Just more flashbacks to the heat of COVID.
Yeah,
because they even have the same curfews going on in their universe that we did.
And at least their curfews make sense.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm like,
at least their curfews happen.
I mean, I still have become so confused. I'm like, COVID gets you after 7 p.m., but not before.
Right.
Yeah, but you're safe before 7.
Like, I remember my dad getting off work at the hospital where he works, going to the Waffle House, and the police were there forcing the Waffle House to shut down, and then telling him, no, you got to go home, it's curfew. And I'm like, for those non-Southern people, Waffle House does not close. Like,
never.
And so literally that was just hilarious when it's like, look, dude, I was just in a hospital. I would have gotten it there. So, like, why are you shutting down my Waffle House?
I'm bringing
I
it,
need some
actually.
eggs.
Yeah, and to be fair, there are 1,000 other diseases you're going to catch at Waffle House besides that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So.
You're going to catch a right hook.
And Waffle House is totally the meeting point, right? From where the villains were. They were all at Waffle
Around
House.
here, it's
They're all at Waffle
Catch a
House.
chair,
Exactly.
flying at you.
Yeah, that trust me, if COVID wanted to, move around in a Waffle House, it's gonna have to fight everything else in there.
COVID's been in the Waffle House and it lost.
That's you're
Waffle
not wrong.
House is the Chuck Norris of restaurants.
COVID's going to get into a knife fight in the back behind Waffle House with Ebola and E. coli.
Yep.
Yeah.
But having a villain hide out in the Waffle House, since it's all glass, is not a good idea. Because now I'm picturing looking in there and just seeing all the suits. And you're just like, oh, I wonder what's going on in there.
But would you actually care? Because like it's a Waffle House. I mean, you could look in a Waffle House any day of the week and see
That's
any
true.
number of
That is true. That is
costumes.
true. Points and counterpoints.
Right.
Points and
Yeah.
counterpoints.
Yeah. Anyway, Michael, have fun clipping out the Waffle House rant.
No, the Waffle House stays. For sure.
Nah, yeah, that definitely stays.
Yeah, Waffle House.
What also stays is the whole rant about us telling to keep the rants in. Don't you dare cut those out, Michael.
Well, while I have you, it is Fenya and Menya. That's what we're going with.
Excellent.
That's what
Oh, thank you.
Most
Thank you.
My
consistent
man.
thing.
Minya and
Most
Minya.
consistent thing I was
Menya and
finding.
Menya. No, that sounds
sense.
about right. That's kind of what I'd
Makes
expect.
sense.
Carry on.
I'd like to move on to my to the segment. Taylor, what the fuck?
Mm.
In this case, brain damage causing her to freak out and punch Emma just right in the kisser.
What the fuck, Taylor?
Yeah,
But also like,
I get it, but
it's also like a fuck yeah, Taylor.
Yeah. I would say this is more of a fuck yeah, Taylor.
Yeah.
they interweave sometimes.
Sometimes. Because definitely I hate it because I've seen this before and it just makes me so sad, especially with what we'll talk about in the next chapter. But like people will do things over and over and over again. And then like the whole fuck around find out. It's like people will fuck around forever and then someone will cause them to find out and then they get mad about it. And oh my gosh, it just... I was literally reading this mad, which is not good because I was on break at work. But
That's fair. There's a lot to be mad
I
about.
like how she
in
just like
this.
dissociated completely. It was like, oh, I hit her. She was just
right, like her subconscious was like,
bitch
this is going
getting
down.
her face whopped.
Just inside, it's a tiny Palpatine. Do it. Strike her
Exactly.
down.
I don't think that
Exactly.
Shadow Stalker made that scene any better. Like, she did not help the situation. I honestly think she escalated it by because, like, yeah, it was already a scene, but when the superhero walks over and she was talking in her loud superhero voice and is like putting her in like a zip tie handcuff, I'm like, come on.
I mean, not to get political, but when have loud cops ever made situations better?
For real.
Yeah, to make the joke in this situation, oh, they had a problem. Call over a cape. Now they got two problems.
Right. And just the thought process of like, it's a child soldier. Like literally a child soldier just
really.
walked over and like put a child that is her peer in handcuffs and then yelled at a grown ass man.
Also, from what we know of Shadow Stalker, just from some of the interludes, Shadow Stalker's only a ward because she was a vigilante and she like did too many bad things and got shoved onto this.
Exactly.
They were like, you better get your act together because it's juvie or the wards.
Right. Like cops shifting departments.
Exactly.
Not really the person you want in this scenario either. Like, probably not a great de-escalator.
Not at all.
And also, and this is me maybe forgetting, but where was the other cape? Who was chauffeuring? What's her name?
Battery, who also has a bad history apparently.
Yeah.
So not even like a better person necessarily.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not a great combo. Man.
Yeah. So just a bad combination all around of people.
Yeah. But fuck, man, I love Danny
He's literally
in this chapter.
a perfect bean.
Because, like,
and that's just it.
I don't remember loving him this much.
He is my favorite character because he can do no wrong in my eyes. Just can't. Because how has he done wrong? No.
Only in his own mind, which is when he freaked out about Taylor getting sent into the hospital and got really angry, apparently. But even that, I feel like that level of dad rage is probably justified.
If your daughter gets shoved in a locker full of used menstrual products, you're telling me and then it sends her to the psych ward, are you telling me you wouldn't flip shit on everybody in that school? I would. So 100% justified.
Yeah.
And the best dad advocate, okay? Because if you saw your daughter just punch her ex-best friend in the face while you're just like having a conversation with her dad, like most people aren't just going to be like, so what's wrong? Like,
yeah. And he immediately defends her too. He's like, it's the concussion. I'm so sorry. Like, he even just immediately jumps in and is like, please don't hold this against her. Like, she's not in her right mind. And then later is like, hey, you're not okay. What's up? Talk to me. And that too is just really nice. That immediate, rather than being like, Taylor, what the heck? Why would you do that? And jumping on her in addition to the other two. He's kind of like immediately defending her, which I think is great too.
And Taylor tells him. She finally tells him.
Yeah, that was so satisfying. More than the punch, honestly.
Yeah.
Like
him just that quiet, like.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, it hurts.
And fuck Emma's dad. What's his name? Alan? Fuck Alan.
Alan.
God.
I have a note in here. It's for later, but it just says fuck you, Alan. It says fuck I love Danny and then fuck you, Alan.
I literally
actually right above fuck you, Alan, it says let's go, Danny, too.
I literally wrote Emma has a lawyer dad. Now it all makes sense. Because I was like, okay, now everything's tracking.
So that does sort of, I was going to say that transitions well next chapter into the confrontation at the school, or the little sit down with the principal and all the teachers, all the bullies. This is quite the moment.
I had so much anxiety reading this, and I didn't realize till like halfway through the chapter that like I just needed to get up and walk around or do something because I just had so much going on. I fucking love this scene, and I felt uncomfortable reading it the whole time.
Oh yeah.
And it,
as you should.
Yeah, and I felt terrible because literally I knew what was going to happen before just because of how realistic he wrote it. Like literally she brings out the different things, and as soon as we find out it's like school accounts, I was like, oh, they're going to discredit that. As soon as she's bringing up all the instances, I'm like, oh, okay, well, they can easily just say that there's no proof. And it, oh my gosh, the whole thing just was like just a pot boiling over and over again.
This is up until this point in the story, I think this chapter is Wildbow's strongest writing. It feels so real, as you're saying, Taylor. The fact that Taylor character, just saying that right after your name, had like logbooks of all of this going day by day was such like oh yes, fuck yes, she kept it all right, but then right into the rebuttals from the parents, nobody really believing her, the anger, the frustration, like it's just too real almost. Like we read fantasy to escape from real life, not to like read transcripts of what happened yesterday afternoon.
And I was taking notes,
Yeah,
because whenever she talked about, Danny and I discussed what we wanted to get out of this meeting beforehand, because he said that you always need to go into these meetings with goals. And I was like, okay, I'm writing that down.
Yeah.
And her goal was so simple, right? All she wanted to do was be transferred.
Right. She's like,
which feels like
Yeah.
such an easy solution.
She's like, the way that she was like, I just don't want to be in this school anymore. And it's like, they're like, well, a 2-week suspension, anything more than a 2-week suspension for them seems terrible. And she's like, I'm literally not asking for that. Like, they were just not listening to her at all. And then they weren't even going to try to transfer. I am so pissed, one, at the principal, obviously at the bitches. And the thing is, people who are bullies usually have parents who are bullies, right? So I'm not surprised at the way that their guardians reacted to all of that stuff. But the principal, Mr. Gladly.
Oh, Mr. Gladly. Fuck that teacher.
Seriously. And then, and I feel like Mrs. Knott was trying a little bit, but just like didn't want to go against Mr. Gladly and the principal. Like, she just obviously wanted to stay on the side of the principal or like stay very neutral. And I just hated that for her, because she was so right when she said it feels like me and my dad against the rest of you. It was so clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that she's like, transfer me,
get
me out of the school. You guys don't want me here. I don't want to be here. Let me leave.
Yeah.
And then they just talk past her like, but if only there was a solution to this. I guess suspension. She's like, might as well beat against a soundproof glass wall. Like, can y'all even hear me? Like, what the fuck?
She's like, y'all have positioned us over here. A suspension is you're just giving them a little vacation and everything. She's like, I don't want any of that. I just want to be transferred. And it's just, I mean, I could see it the whole time where I'm like, this principal sat the teachers down and was like, hey, we're about to have a meeting. And one of the partners at the law firm, his daughter is getting accused of something. So we need to go ahead and make this go away. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't sitting there like, hey, we've had a student that's been bullied and we kind of need, no, it was definitely like, hey, we need to make sure that this family doesn't cause trouble with all of our like more affluent students.
Mm-hmm.
No, it definitely felt like that, where it was like, okay, yeah, you guys are just immediately jumping on this person's side, or at least trying to do that without making it seem like you're doing that. And that's just was so frustrating. And I get it. Like, I get a small bit of it, because you can't just throw the book at a student because another student accuses them of something. But the difference is that it's very clear that stuff has happened to Taylor. And they even admit that. They're like, yeah, some of this probably happened, which is just a stupid thing to say. But it's just so frustrating because she's not making this up. Like, you can tell. And of course we know, because we're looking at it from Taylor's perspective. But if you would just listen to her and you would hear what she's saying, you'd hear the descriptions. And my goodness, even just to say, you know what, let's try to get some other students. Let's get some anonymous people maybe. We'll try to confirm your story for you, see if we can get any other reports of stuff like this. They don't even try. It's so frustrating that they don't even try.
Yeah.
They're saying, do you have any evidence, Taylor? They're putting all the burden on the poor bullied kid, which is so wrong. Like, that's just the exact opposite of what you should do as an administrator in this situation.
That they brought her in, and the first meeting with the faculty isn't, hey, we're going to sit down with the principal and the guidance counselor. It's, we're going to sit down with the principal, the guidance counselor, Gladly, and all the other people.
Yeah, like, they didn't have...
Like, isn't that usually like abuser tactics, like 101 what not to do is get them in the room with the abusers?
There should have been...
Yeah, well, I don't think it was like a guidance counseling session.
Yeah, of course. But that should have been like a, hey, we've got a problem, teacher. There's been, all this bullying. And it's like, oh, cool. Let us bring in all the bullies too.
Well, the problem actually is that Alan called the meeting.
Oh, you're right.
Oh, that's true. You're right.
Oh, shoot,
because
you're right.
They had the ace up the sleeve, which is they finally pushed Taylor to the limit of her assaulting his daughter. Which it was assault,
Let's be honest. What prosecutor? Because her dad's not a prosecutor. Okay, so he's not just going to suddenly be able to press charges and do this case. Like, he could be her defending lawyer, sure, but he's not a prosecutor. So what prosecutor is going to do a case where it's like a 15, 16-year-old girl punched another 15, 16-year-old girl? Like, if they fucking press charges every time a kid got punched by another kid.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear you. I definitely hear you there. But it's definitely a viable threat.
Yeah, I think it's more of a offensive, like it just being the threat of like, hey, if you try to make this, if you try to attack my daughter, Emma in this case, like just know that you will not win that fight. And, he goes on the offensive first. And this entire time is like, yeah, he called it so quickly that hopefully they wouldn't have time to get their shit together. But as we all know, Taylor brought the receipts.
Yep. And also, they even mentioned like, oh, you will go bankrupt paying all the legal fees. So it's like, I have the means to drag this out in court. You don't have the means to fight it, which is just
the lowest of the
ridiculous.
low.
Which is sad because it's part of, I mean, because the reality is like, if it did go to court, like if it actually got in front of a judge and jury, Taylor probably wins that. Like there's enough circumstantial evidence to win a civil case. You don't need civil cases are different than criminal in that sense. But like, I think that's part of it is Alan being the attorney knows that like, okay, my only chance of actually winning this is to either prevent the lawsuit from ever coming to court or just doing tactical stuff to drag it out so that they can't afford it. Because the reality is like Taylor probably wins that. And he doesn't want to be in that position where now his daughter is, got a criminal record or anything like that, which is kind of just so sleazy, like just brutal tactics, which are pointed out as well, as you guys have been saying.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I hate it.
Yeah, it's also interesting that Taylor, as we're in her mindset and, her state of thinking, she is having to hold back all of her impulses now. And we kind of got a vibe from this from the very first scene of like her in the bathroom. But if she isn't holding back, her power is going. And if she isn't holding back, she's throwing punches. Like her natural state, at least at this point, and potentially since she got powers, is militant.
Well, and did you notice when Danny had said like there's probably like a reason for that? I think this goes back to me thinking back in the very beginning when we got his interlude, where I'm like, I feel like he has maybe some like extreme emotion or something. Like maybe he doesn't have a power that's like a power, but maybe it's just like intense emotions. And I think that maybe he's thinking that like maybe Taylor also is getting those same kind of like emotional outburst and like the extremeness of it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like maybe he's a bipolar, manic depressive.
Yeah, but this is a fantasy, so that's not.
I mean, given the everything else talked about, I feel like it's not that fantastical to have some mental health problems too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's also, before we jump to that, he lost his wife in a horrific accident,
Yeah.
So you're dealing with that as well emotionally. And then you have to raise a daughter on your own, which if he was like a regular dad, he wasn't even doing like 50% of the raising. I mean, you know what I mean?
He's having to learn how to cook waffles and, casseroles and anything to feed them because he's just like, oh, man, I don't know how to heat it up.
Well, Taylor does kind of say that, how she's like, you got to learn how to cook for yourself, when your dad's a widower.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know how to. And he's just busy, too. Like, he's the only one. Yeah, he's the only one providing for the family. He's busy working late hours. And clearly, too, he's one of those... He's like just a slight step above a lower class blue collar worker, clearly. Because he's just immediately like, I'm doing the best I can. But when Alan mentions, we could drag this out for a long time in court, you can feel his heart drop where he's like, you would do that? Like, that we don't have a lot of money and you would do that to us?
Which is why
Like, that
my
just-
favorite part of the chapter
it
is
sucks.
every time Danny said, "Shut up, Alan." Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just so annoying because this isn't even the first offense. Like, this is, okay, we had a student that was shoved in a locker full of used tampons, had a mental lapse. And like Danny's like, you told me you would look into this. Like, y'all told me that y'all would look into this. Why does my daughter have notebooks full of incidences? Like, what is happening here?
Hmm.
And I think that's part of it too with the administrators and the teachers is they feel guilty because they're trying to make all these excuses of like, oh, we have so many other things going on. It's just so hard for us to do all of this and to keep in mind all the things you want us to do. But that's just such a lame excuse. And you can feel it too. It's like they're just really trying to back up and cover their asses as much as they can. And it feels so bad.
Yeah. This is the example of like you can use supervillains as like, oh yeah, why didn't I make it? Oh, there were supervillains bombing the place. Like this is one of those times where the excuse just doesn't land. Of like, oh, why can't you take care of her? It's like, because supervillain gangs are in the school. Like,
yeah,
sure,
they're like, we have people
whatever.
selling drugs, and I'm like, really, Mr. Gladley? You're stopping kids from? You're probably selling drugs.
Yeah, if anybody's selling drugs, it's definitely
That's
Mr.
what I'm
Gladley.
saying.
Oh, 100%.
Also, finally, we get the moment where Taylor goes full school shooter and is like, how about I just bring a knife to school? How about I just start stabbing people?
Would you listen to me then?
Yeah. Like, all right, calm down, Taylor.
I kind of get it, though. That's the...
I just want to know why,
Nick.
and maybe it's for dramatic effect, but
get it.
why the option of doing what Brian did, which was like online school, or getting her GED wasn't an option. Like, that's not been crossed her mind once this whole time. And I just feel like...
Not yet. I imagine this might be the
Yeah,
straw
I'm
that
just
breaks the camel's back, though. Where she's like, you know what? You're right. Fuck it.
I think this goes into one of the things she's repeated a few times, which is she's not about to not show up to something because that's letting them win. But by going to Arcadia, she still gets a W under her belt because she's not calling it quits. And at the same time, she's not giving in, but it would relieve all of her problems and still allow her to, go to school, to live best revenge is a well-lived life, that whole thing.
There's a point when you need to not make it about winning as in getting a one up, but winning as in the win is getting yourself out of a situation like that. Like, and I get it. I mean, she's a teenager. She's not going to, she thinks it's a battle that needs to be won. And sometimes winning the battle is just leaving it. And I think that would probably be the best course of action, because if she can't get to Arcadia High School, then you should not, like, no matter what, the option is not to stay in that school. The teachers are shit. The principal's shit. Obviously, it's a shitty school just in general. Full offense to the principal. But yeah, and then like maybe have a bumblebee that's like constantly buzzing in their ear, like around their face. They're just like something like that where, I don't know. And I think that's just comes with like the immaturity, because like I'm speaking from the perspective of someone who's not a teenager for a while. So I just feel like it's like, just remove yourself. Just get out of there. You don't have to take it as a loss if you don't you just don't have to. So
I think something that probably also prevented her before is if she just dropped out, like that, her dad's going to find out that part. And, she doesn't want to disappoint him, but she also didn't want to tell him about the bullying until then. But now that she's told him, perhaps that becomes an option. She's like, hey, Dad, I don't want to ever go back to that place again. And he's like, why would I ever make you go back there?
He's like, actually, I really like your supervillain friends. They're way nicer.
Yeah. I mean, that is basically what it is, though, sadly, is that
Yeah.
her best friends are bad people, technically.
But they're the only people that are being good to her outside of her dad.
Yeah.
Exactly. They're the only people who've been nice to her.
How does the Wreck-It Ralph quote go? Right, we're bad guys, but that doesn't mean we have to be bad guys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
But Taylor walks out of the school, has to, take a little venting moment. She gets the call, and Lisa's like, "Hey, we're about to have a throwdown. You in?" And Taylor hits us with the line, "I want to hit someone."
Oh yeah.
And I'm ready to fucking go.
Gloves are off.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Any final thoughts before we get into wrapping this up with some predictions and closing us out? Any last thoughts on the first 4 chapters as a whole?
No.
All right. We've said all that needs to be said. I love it.
I think.
All right.
I'll just add this.
Okay.
I don't know if this is the moment, and I actually haven't read the rest of Arc 5, so I can't remember what happens next. But I remember we talked a lot about in previous arcs, especially Taylor, you were predicting that there was going to be a heel turn. And this kind of feels like that pivotal moment where it's like, okay.
Yeah, we're getting closer.
This is the moment. We're getting closer. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, with that, then we will save the juicy predictions for the rest of the arc. So for next episode, we'll go ahead and we'll look at the remainder of Arc 5 plus the interlude and see exactly what Taylor decides to hit. And until next time, thank you for everyone who's listening in. It's been a lot of fun as always. We're going to be here through the rest of the whole series, so stick around. We got a long way to go. Michael, you want to play us out? All right. Welcome back to another episode of Dissecting Worm. I think that's what we're going to go with. I think we've been playing around with some names, but I think I like Dissecting Worm.
It's a pretty good name.
Yeah. I think
all of our worm ideas, I'm very surprised that that's the one we skipped over somehow.
Yeah. I know. It just kind of slotted it in there. Anyway, we are back. Myself, Jacob, with Alan. No other guests this episode, and we are looking at Arc 5 of Worm. Probably just the first 4 or so chapters, and then I think we're gonna push the rest of the arc to the next episode just for time purposes, because boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to work through in this arc. So I was trying to think about where we wanted to start thinking about this arc in terms of how we wanted to break it up. Because it's funny. There is a lot of meat here, but there's not necessarily that much time to work with compared to the other arcs. You could fit this into one episode. There's not a ton of extra stuff to deal with, but there is enough for a full episode here.
Yeah, I think there's enough conversations between what I would consider the first part and the second part, 5.1 through 4, and then 5.5 through 10, and then the interlude to warrant. There's just all these conversations between people that take place that I think warrant 2 whole episodes. And even there's some other pacing issues with this, which get into more so the end. But what I do like about cutting this into 2 episodes is that allows us to put more interludes in as post-credit scenes.
Yes, exactly. My thought as well. All right, so let's dive in. These first 4 chapters deal primarily with Taylor's outing with her dad, her confrontation with Emma, the confrontation at the school with the bullies and the principal and all the teachers there, that whole thing.
Well, you forgot about the first part. The first
I skipped over. Yeah,
is,
you're right. I did skip over
the
that.
villain meeting.
Yes.
And then we get to the civilian stuff.
I mean, part of me wants to play around with this script a lot, but part of me is also like, Wildbow made it easy. I mean, I feel like that's a great intro to the episode. Is the villain meeting?
Yeah, no complaints.
I feel like it ties in well. Especially we're keeping all the bombs going off in the last episode. Carry that right in.
Yeah, I think it's
not much needs to change.
I think we talked about last time moving the Brutus interlude over potentially. And I think that's a really good decision because it ties the 2 episodes together. If you end the last episode with Purity going and joining and having a conversation with Max, it's perfect because, she walks in with Max in this episode.
Yep.
But if you have, and then this episode starts with, Bitch and Brutus, which is a perfect tie back, especially if we end it with a bomb going off and her looking and being like, what the hell's going on? Tying to timeline wise, what we remember. You don't have to have any sort of like previously on. It's just Bitch is doing her thing because she was off doing her thing. And then a bomb goes off and you're like, oh, that's right. Bombs. And you're back in. No need for the last time.
Exactly. And
then, of course, that ties perfectly into dealing with Hook Wolf.
Exactly. Actually, you're kind of right on the money. Yeah, a lot of this is going to flow really nicely, which is perfect. Makes for easy writing.
So what doesn't make it for easy writing in this point is we gotta fix the timeline.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
So to fix the timeline, because we've got this thing where like Taylor goes ahead and there's like at the very beginning of all of these arcs, Taylor has this issue where she does her thing and she decides she's going to go superheroing on Thursday and she doesn't do it until Sunday night.
Right.
And then she, comes and it's this weird like time jump that I didn't feel. I feel like if we do a show, it's got to be like she's doing this on a Friday. She's like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going. And then like everything kind of immediately day after day after day happens.
Right.
And then you get to this and, she's got brain damage. So she's out for a week.
Yeah.
And that's,
yeah,
that's a long time.
It is. It's especially with, as you said, the way the episodes have been pacing so far. Yeah. I mean, the nice thing is there's a lot of easy ways to sort of go around that, right? So either we just shorten the time she's out, just to a day or so and just kind of keep things moving, which in my opinion makes a bit more sense because of everything with the bombs going off and the sort of all the villains getting together to discuss it. That feels like it'd be a pretty urgent thing. They're not going to drag that out a bit. So, maybe we just shorten that timeline a bit.
Yeah. So part of this, I think, is for this episode. And this would come to the interlude not the interlude, but an extra scene that we'd come up with that we wanted to add. I think this is a perfect part at the end of this episode as we split it into half. So, it's been a week. There are bombs going off everywhere. What does Bakuda want? And people kind of talking, mentioning things about like, it's just running rampant. We just need to end this. And I think it's perfect to end this episode on her breaking Lung out.
Oh, okay.
That this is the episode where the post credit or the end of, Yeah.
See, I was thinking, okay, well, I mean, it could work either way, I guess. I think in my mind, I was going to put that in the last episode to coordinate or to parallel rather the explosions, right? So you show the bombs going off, you show the reactions to it, and we see in that same scene the breakout, just to sort of illustrate the whole point of the bombings in the first place.
Yeah.
But you could cut back to it, of course, if you want to put it in this episode and cut back to that moment, and then leave the bombs a mystery in the previous episode, and then answer that question here. I think that does work too. So you could easily put it here.
Yeah, and I think my logic would be for Bakuda, like they talk about her during the meeting, like she's a dog without a leash, maybe. Like now that Lung's gone, yada yada. She thinks she's in control. She's a maniac. But at the end of this episode, you realize like the whole reason that she's running around causing all this chaos is to kind of draw all the heroes and people's attentions away from Lung.
Right.
And that's when she strikes. It takes a week to maybe draw people away, draw attention away, or maybe put pressure enough that they have to move him. And that's when she hits him.
Okay.
So maybe it has taken a week.
Okay, yeah. That works too.
Which works, I think, well for the second half because they go like, oh my God, and Lung's here.
True. So make that that would be interesting because you could actually, that's true. We could actually reword that. I'm just kind of thinking about this, where what if the breakout, what if nobody realizes Lung's at the fight at the end until we see him or until the characters see him? Like the audience can be in on the secret, but like the characters, what if they don't realize Lung is there? They think they're going to take down Bakuda, and there he is. That's interesting. Okay, we could play around with that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. That's going to be in the future here.
So let's go to the bad guy meeting.
I think visually, I mean, obviously, how can you not make the comparison to Joker's entrance in The Dark Knight, right? Like, it's the same scene, essentially, just with a slightly different,
Are you talking about the gang leaders?
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The magic trick, make this pencil disappear, that whole thing. Right. Like they're meeting there because they're all afraid of Batman and Joker's calling them out on it. And it's kind of similar because in Worm, they're all meeting because of Bakuda.
That's one of my favorite scenes of anything ever.
Oh, it's so good. It's so well done.
Good.
So we can obviously, give a little love to that scene, but also trying to want to make it your own. But I just love the idea.
It's jam packed with style, is what I wrote down here.
Style, I like
There's
that.
So many, because we have all the different crews, like doing this visually. They need to be, so distinct. And each one of them, Wild Boat goes into, descriptions about costumes because those are important, but also like they have style as well as just like distinctive style. It's so good. Like Empire 88 for, being the massive pieces of shit they are so cool when they swagger in.
Oh,
Holy shit.
Yeah.
And then Fault Line comes in with her crew and, what a fucking weird group, but like Fault Line herself fucking has this tactical skirt and body armor. Like,
just some great moments. And I love because we get to this point where throughout the season so far, we've gotten introduced over time to bits and characters here and there. We've gotten the Undersiders and sort of their haphazard costumes. We get glimpses of like the Protectorate, right, with Armsmaster. We see the wards and their costumes. We're slowly kind of building towards, and then we get we get this great scene with all of these villains coming in, decked out, ready to go, just like very very Megamind, right? It's like you'll never be a super villain. Oh yeah, what makes a super villain? Presentation. It's just
it's not wrong.
Exactly. So no, I totally agree. I think you can have a lot of fun.
What is it? The skids? What do they call them? I said skids because I'm thinking Letterkenny, and the one guy's name is Skid Mark. But I just put down the D-Gens from Upcountry. I forget what their names are.
No, I can't
you know
think
who
of
I'm
it
talking
either.
about.
Yeah.
They come in, and while they certainly have, we'll call it a distinctive look, they don't really have a thing going.
Yeah.
Like they just look like meth heads with bandanas. At least, that's kind of the look, the vibe I got.
Right.
So
that works.
A little bit different than everybody else.
Well, and I like that too. I like that there's a lot of contrast there. It's a lot of fun. Like you said, you've got sort of the more the 1%er look that I think Empire 88 brings, right?
Yeah.
That you've got Fault Lines, Island of Misfit Toys. You've got like just like you said, style. I mean, we're saying the same thing over and over again, but you're right. I mean, there's just a lot here to visually work with, which unfortunately we don't really play around too much in the script itself, but certainly in terms of thinking about how the scene is structured, a lot to work with. A great moment, a great way to kind of start the episode.
Which leads me to ask, like, do we have Lisa sit there and exposit every person that comes in? Do we leave it to just, you know what, you'll find out when you find out, which I'm inclined to. Or do you have, dare I say it, Suicide Squad introductions?
Hell no. Nope. Absolutely not. I put my foot down there. We're just going to scratch that.
I'm glad you said it. It hurt coming out.
There's no bad ideas, right?
Yeah, which is why we don't say them anymore. Idea. Michael, strike that from the record. There were 2 ideas I had, not a third one.
Perfect. Exactly. No, I mean, I like that you mentioned that because I think, the Suicide Squad style, it works in very specific, what's the word I'm thinking of? Tones and styles, I guess, right? Like a Guardians of the Galaxy-esque type tone. Worm just doesn't have that. And if you try to do that, I think you lose a lot of the impact of the brutality, of the realism, of sort of that darker nature. Which
I'm inclined to less is more. So I'd rather not say a damn thing and then the audience be completely lost than over-explain stuff.
I'm certainly in that camp as well. I think if you wanted to make a couple of exceptions, it would depend on how we want to fully flesh out Purity and Max's conversation in the previous episode, because I think we should establish like that they're Empire 88 and what that means.
I mean, at least for Empire 88, like there's a couple people that that we don't see their powers, but for the most part, like we're about to see Kaiser in his full going off, and we're about to see Fenya and Menya, and we've seen Purity, and we're gonna see Neuter, and we're gonna see Gregor, and we kind of get a vibe for Fault Line.
Yeah, I was gonna say Fault Line's crew. Fault Line's crew. There we go. I can speak. I promise. I think they work best or better in a bit of mystery and shadow anyway. So less is more absolutely with them. We get introduced to the Travelers, which I forgot when we were reading this, that we see them so soon, but we get the Travelers here. Again, better to be shrouded in mystery with them. So really, you're talking about like Empire 88, and that's it, which you can be pretty brief on that. So because again, we have even the little grunt that Glory Girl and Panacea beat up was Empire 88. So you can put some of the exposition there, right? Like you don't have to just sit down and be like, and these guys are the white supremacists, and these guys are the monster people, and I don't know who they. Yeah, you don't have to do that. You don't.
Yeah, and I mean their style kind of gives off enough, and we've talked, like you said, we've talked about Fault Line's crew before. Or at least Fault Line. We've talked about Fault Line.
Mm-hmm.
So I think most of them, like I said before, I think their style tells a lot about them. So when they come in, you've got the meth heads. That, who are they? Meth heads who got powers. It's pretty simple. You know, who are these guys? Well, we know they're white supremacists, so no explanation there. Now, Fault Line's crew with the monsters, that's got a little bit of a mystery to it. Which evolves throughout this chapter, but okay. I guess moving on, Trickster has a pretty good. He's a great way to shift the expositive. I guess the expositive character. You have the rookie character that you're always telling all the rules to, and in this case, it's Ben Taylor, of course. But Trickster is great because he's from out of town, and so it's a good shift, to break the monotony of constantly having to explain to Taylor, and by Taylor the audience, to have this new vehicle, Trickster, to explain to the audience, hey, this is how things work here.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, he fits in there pretty well, which is great. But absolutely, you can structure the dialogue of that scene around a conversation with Trickster, and you can do any sort of little exposition you want directed towards him. Exactly, and that's how you creatively fit in exposition. Is you can throw it in a dialogue, etc. So we can certainly kind of structure that dialogue around a bit and make sure it flows nice and smoothly.
Yeah. Another good part we're talking about this is we got to figure out, because we cut the Baka to fight. So an important element from that, she has everybody's bombs hooked up to her heart. So I think, given that everybody's kind of sharing information, and that the focus they talk about, like, oh yeah, that's kind of why it's so important that the Undersiders be here. I think I think the Undersiders are there because they've tangled with Lung before. They've kicked his ass, and that's kind of gotten them some respect, they say. But Tattletale has information that she's dug up. And Coil also can, spill some stuff about, somebody says something like, she has her heart hooked up. So if we kill her, we can't kill her, because if we do, everybody blows up. And that's a lot of people, even for villains. That's a lot of people for us to kill. Yeah. Somebody goes, well, how do you know that? And then, Alec, maybe out of turn, speaks like, dude, she broadcast it live and told everybody. She's a maniac. She told us all, try and kill me. And then he holds up his phone, and it's her just try and kill me. You do that, and you'll be killing every one of them. They're all hooked up to my heart.
Oh man, I'm trying to keep my notes here. I got thoughts for the next episode, but no, I like that. The other thing I was reminded of that we want to make sure we get in here or move around is the confrontation between Gru and Bitch right after this meeting, right? Where he's kind of reprimanding her for the dogfighting ring. So we just need to make sure that because I really like that little moment.
It's a really good moment.
Yeah. And one that I think we absolutely need to keep, but we got to make sure that it hits at the right time. So might have to play around with when, because I think did we decide? I think we're going to put the Brutus interludes / dogfighting ring at the end of the last episode, or did you want to move that to this episode?
I think the beginning of this.
Beginning of this, okay, yeah, and that works. That would actually probably work pretty well.
You could hit the you do that. That's your open intro sequence, and then you kick this off with 1 week later.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that actually works. I like that. I do like that.
Uh,
All right, well, let's keep going.
Yeah. So moving past, we got to hit bitch a few times all the way. So now we get to the mall. We get back to the civilian issues,
Mm-hmm.
which, man, I don't actually have a whole lot of writing notes for this because it, it goes just the way I got nothing for this. Do you have any notes on this?
Not really notes, just so much as that I do think that there's a lot to play around with visually here because there's a lot of tension at the mall.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That I think is just going to be so great to work with if if the lucky director.
Much about this.
Yeah.
That I think visually, this is the time culturally in America, at least, mall shootings, kind of a thing going around.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to understand, oh yeah, there's a checkpoint at the mall with all this. There's going to be a lot of this, between that, Taylor. I've said before, Taylor gives off school shooter energy, which wasn't something I'd gotten on previous reads. And in this one, she literally says, hey, how about I come in here and start stabbing people, huh?
Yeah.
No, she's a school shooter for sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I heard it best. I was actually reading something completely unrelated to Worm, but about science fiction and fantasy. And I had never heard it put so simply, but it's so true. And that's that science fiction, but you can rope kind of fantasy in here as well, is not a it's not like a prophecy of what's to come, right? Like dystopian futures and all of that kind of stuff. It is a criticism of what is. And I love that so much because we can do exactly what you're just saying. Like everybody understands the fear and the and sort of that unsettling tension in the air whenever there's like a shooting at a big public place. Fortunately, I have never been around one in close proximity, but I've had friends that were pretty close, and it's not a fun feeling. Yeah. And so, there's ways that you can really sort of, I'm thinking of like music and just background conversations. I mean, when Taylor hits Emma, there's people freak out because there's this fear that something's about to start. It's such a great scene, and I know we're going to probably get into this. Spoilers: we're recording this before the book club portion, so maybe we might be doubling up on some conversations here. But just with how quickly the wards step in, everything that follows. This is such a great scene for a television series. Again, don't really have any notes here. I don't think there's really anything we change. The dialogue flows, everything flows there. Everything sort of works, but it's such an important scene, and I think we keep it in pretty much as intact as we can.
Yeah, same for I think same for the whole confrontation at the school.
Yeah,
it's actually it's so tense.
Yeah,
so tense.
Yeah,
and it's perfect. I got no notes other than maybe some very quick editing back and forth, in this room between people, but.
Oh yeah, I mean, you're doing this whole scene is like the climax of Good, Bad, and the Ugly, right? All the darting back and forth, looking here, who's there, Mexican standoff the entire time. Yeah, very much so. There's a lot of that.
And he hits it. I've got the perfect spot for the end of the episode. Taylor gets out of that intense scene. Her dad's trying to, hey, okay. She's like, I'm fine. She calls up Lisa. We're getting a band back together. She goes, I want to hit someone. And I'm like, let's fucking go.
Yeah. Yes.
That's it. I want to hit you in. I want to hit someone. I'll take that as a yes.
Yep. Oh man. And if we do the bitch interlude, if we put in the Bakuda breaking lung out here,
I think that happens. I want to hit someone. Credits roll. Bakuda breaks lung out.
Yeah, I think that really stretches the episode. You can,
because he ends. We talked about how we imagine that. And that being, he gets out and she's like, hey, and he's like, I've got a bone to pick with one person in particular.
Yeah.
Which is perfect because both of them are ready to rear in for a fight, and we're about to get it.
Yep. I was watching, talking about end credits and things. I really love the way. Have you ever watched Veep, the show Veep on HBO?
Oh, I have.
Okay, I figured, but I had to ask. The way they do their credits, of course, it's a comedy. It's a very different style.
Yes.
But I love the way they do it because it's not. The episode is ended, right? We've gotten everything we needed to get done. But there's still jokes left to play. And they play those jokes. They give us the punchlines while the credits are rolling. And it just sort of, it caps off the episode so beautifully. And I love how they do that. And I was thinking, you could easily do the same thing here. And just sort of have those credits going, right? Have Bakuda and Onili and some other goons riding in the cars or however you want to stage the scene, right? And then just cut right at the end to the breakout as the final credits roll, and you're just left with that tension. Plus, I'm a credits purist. I think everyone should get their moment for their name to be seen if they worked on a project, and I am all in favor of doing whatever you can to get as many names in people's faces at the end there.
Yeah.
So if you got to get creative with it, I love that. I think it sort of bolsters the credits because nobody stays for the credits anymore. Everybody skips over that.
Yeah.
It's kind of unfortunate.
I think this is one of those things that having an end credit scene and getting people to at the very least, stick around and talk during that.
Yeah.
While they wait for the end credit scene, to see that. I think another fun thing to do during the end credit sequence is to have not just a blank slate there, but maybe the top third of the screen be the city line of Brockton Bay.
Okay.
And change it, it wouldn't have to be a whole lot of changes, because you're just doing the city line. Change it according to whatever's happening in the world at the time. Bombs are going off, the city line at night, fires are raging, credits are rolling in front of that into the black, the blacker area so that they can be more seen. But you've got like kind of an ambiance of like what's still going on in the world while the world is still active, even as credits roll and while you're waiting, week to week or whatever.
Right.
That world still exists. And Brockton Bay is a character.
Oh yeah. Very much so.
And that's just like a small thing, to add to that.
Yeah. No, I do like that. And I like your Brockton Bay as a character very much so. And I think anything we can do to sort of enhance that, right? Give the city some character. I think that's always going to be a good idea.
Well, do we have any other notes for this first half of the arc?
Like always, I'm sure we'll come back and sort of adjust some things, move some things around. I know we haven't talked formally about this, but I think it'd be really fun to do sort of once we kind of hit where we think season 1 ends, to sort of have an episode where we come back and just sort of clean up and polish and review season 1, right? So I think we'll probably touch on this again, but I think for now, I've said everything I want to say. All right. Well, thanks for listening. We are going to be picking up with the second half of Arc 5 in the next episode, kind of splitting that up just for time purposes. Hopefully help keep everything a bit organized. Ourselves organized primarily is what we're talking about here. So we hope you enjoyed listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Thank you so much for listening. Read along with us at parahumans.wordpress.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What did you love? What did you hate? anything you think we missed, etc., as long as it's kind. If you'd like to get in touch, you can find us on Twitter, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, and Reddit at Brockton Bay BC, or click the link in the description.